Hello, everyone. My name is Janet Hyde, and I'm a parishioner here at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Madison. We have a very special speaker tonight, Marcia Baldridge, but before I introduce her, I have a few things I wanted to say. First of all, I want to say thanks to Father Andy Jones, who's up there in the balcony managing the electronics so people can be participants on the web, and thank you for doing that and for supporting these efforts to reduce gun violence. We have two goals tonight. One of them is to gain a deeper understanding of the impact of gun violence, not only on those who get shot and maybe killed, but also the so-called collateral damage to those who are survivors. And our speaker tonight is a survivor of gun violence. So that's one part of it, to gain that deeper understanding. The second part is to understand how to take action to reduce gun violence. Our country is ready for it. The churches are ready for it. So we don't want this to be a depressing session. And toward the end, Marcia has some ideas for taking action, and so do I. So we will address what we can do to reduce gun violence. So with that, let me introduce our speaker, Marcia Baldridge. I'm not going to tell you much about her because I want her to tell her own story. So here we are.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here. Welcome to everyone for taking a deep interest in the gun violence that is occurring in our country right now. I am Marcia Baldridge, and I am a gun violence survivor. I'm going to tell the story of my son, and I'm going to tell my story, and then at the end, talk about at least one thing that I feel strongly about. And as you can see behind me, I wanted to introduce my son to everyone. His name was Sidney Charles Baldridge. And the screen that I have up back there shows him as a little child, as a teenager, as a young man, and the last one is actually the picture we use for his obituary. So that is my sweet little boy that grew up into a wonderful young man. So with that, I will get into the storytelling. I grew up in a small town in Michigan. The name of it was Twin Lakes. After high school, I moved to Chicago, where I landed a good job with GE Healthcare, and shortly thereafter relocated with my company to Milwaukee. In between high school and college, which I started at a late age, I fell in love, got married, had 3 children, girl, boy, girl. My focus tonight will be on my son, Sidney, who I lost to gun violence in December 2008. He was a sweet little boy, my only son. He had a great smile and a sense of humor. He loved deeply his parents, his granny, and all animals. On more than one occasion, he brought home strays and injured animals to nurse back to health. One of his potential patients was a bird with a broken wing. He set up the bird in a shoebox in one of our bedroom closets. Unfortunately, our cat, Fluffy, found the bird before it could be nursed back to health. He was devastated. His heart was in the right place. He also was a bit mischievous child. Many times he pushed the envelope to the end of the table. This did not bode well with his dad. I am sad to say, many times it earned him a thrashing at the hand of his dad. This pained my heart. In spite of this, Sidney grew into a wonderful young man. He had many aspirations. His biggest love was his family, sometimes at the expense of his own needs and wants. He had a heart as big as all outdoors. And then he grew up. He had the nerve to grow up, and he landed a full-time job at the age of 18, found his true love, and got married at the age of 20. And then he bought a house. And of course, you can't have a true house without a dog. So he had to get his dog. And I was so proud of him. Oh my, things were moving quickly. And I was not ready to be an empty nester. After all, Mom, me, was the one who makes sure that her children are safe and have all that they need, and also provided some of what they wanted. Wow, a lot for a doting mom like me to take in. Would his new wife treat him right? Does she know what his favorite foods are? Will she take care of him the way I did? Sidney, my only son, a middle child, was always vying for attention, be it good or not so good. He loved to tease his sisters, and me too. He was the only child of mine that could make me go off script and use colorful language. He even made bets with his sisters on how long it would take for Mom to resort to those colorful words, and he won all the time. Sidney was a kind, loving, handsome, funny, and mischievous young man. I loved him so much. He could always make me laugh and gave the very best hugs in the world. I was blessed to have him for 33 years. On December 13th, 2008, my life changed forever. A Madison police officer rang my doorbell on that sunny Saturday afternoon, and I buzzed her in. As she walked down the hall to my apartment, I said to her, "It's about my son, isn't it?" She said, "Let's go inside." At this point, I already knew. We entered my apartment, and she asked me to sit down. Gently and professionally, she told me my son was found in my condo in Milwaukee, dead as a result of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I was devastated. I was like, was that me screaming, "No, no, no"? I did not recognize my own voice. My world stood still. I felt so empty inside. The sadness, the pain was almost unbearable. The responsibility to notify family and friends fell to me. The worst day of my life, my soul felt like it went dark. No more hugs, no more teasing, no more jokes, no more of his wonderful smiles. Well, he owned a gun, and it was taken from him in a traffic stop about a year before. I was so happy because I do not like guns, and I was always worried about him having one. I was so happy that they took that gun. But my happiness was short-lived. He went out and bought another one. It was just that easy for him to go get another gun. Approximately 1 week before his death, he called me. He sounded calm, but I was very concerned because a few days earlier, his wife of 13 years, the love of his life, had left. I encouraged him to come stay with me here in Madison so he would not be alone. He insisted he was fine. He wanted to stay in Milwaukee and finish some classes he had started. I told him I wanted him to call me every day. And I said to him, don't make me come down there. And we hung up. That was the last time I heard his voice. He never called. I called every day. He didn't answer. I didn't go. Sidney was bipolar, which made him vulnerable to suicide. I had on many occasions during our phone conversations encouraged him to seek a mental health professional. He would start with one, then he would stop. He would start and he would stop, going to the visit and taking the medication. Before Sidney died, I had my own opinion about people who completed suicide. I thought they were cowards. I thought it was the coward's way out. Not anymore. I've learned so much from the Survivors of Suicide support group that I attended. The one thing that stuck out most to me was the answer to this question. Why would my son or daughter do this? Didn't he or she know I loved him or her? The answer they gave us was, they do not want to die. They just do not want to hurt anymore. Mental health crisis plays a huge part with gun violence. Mental health crisis and guns are like gasoline and lit matches. They do not play well together. Guns are a devastatingly effective means of ending one's own life. Suicides attempted with firearms are lethal about 85% of the time. For comparison, where drug and poison overdosing accounted for 71% of attempts, but only 12% fatalities. One of the biggest myths about suicide prevention is that people who survive a suicide attempt will simply find another means. Dr. Matthew Miller, the co-director of the Harvard Injury Control Research Center, said, you've got people saying, oh, if he didn't shoot himself, he would have jumped off a tall building or found another way to kill himself. It's not illogical, it's just wrong. Wrong in the face of facts that strongly say otherwise. About 90% of people who survive suicide attempts do not go on to kill themselves. Red flag laws, or better known as extreme risk laws, can help. Currently, 19 states and the District of Columbia have red flag laws, which allow family members or law enforcement to intervene by petitioning the court for an order to temporarily temporarily prevent someone in crisis from accessing a firearm. In Connecticut, where such a law has been in effect since 1998, police seized more than 2,000 guns between 1999 and 2009. And the main concern there was suicide. That was the common reason. Right here in our great state of Wisconsin, suicides make up 70% of all firearms deaths. Nearly half of all suicides in Wisconsin are by firearm. Without interventions, irrevocable damage is done. I am a living witness to the damage it causes. It has to change. There are ways to stop suicidal people from possessing firearms. I don't have all the answers, but I know we don't have to live like this. We can and must do better. It begs the question, is a red flag law something Wisconsin should consider enacting? And I say, yes, it is. Please let my son's death make a difference today. I do not want another mom or dad to suffer the same unimaginable pain of losing their child to suicide by gun. Let's keep our dearly beloved children safe. I realize that suicide isn't the only means of gun violence. We have been experiencing way too many mass shootings. And red flag laws could really make a difference in those cases as well. As I close, I would like to say that I required during my grief one-on-one counseling, grief support programs, kindly co-workers, friends, and church family support to pull me through my grief. I was angry with Sidney for leaving me. I was angry with God for not stopping him from doing this. I was angry with his wife for leaving him. And most of all, I was angry with myself for not protecting him, because that's what moms and dads are supposed to do for their kids. For 3 years, I turned my back on my faith. I turned my back on God's church, on His Word, and His worship. But I am happy to say today that life is much better. It's not perfect. There's things I'm still working on. But all of that's possible because God never left me. He was there when I finally turned around. So let's move forward. Let's make some noise about getting a red flag law, at least here in Wisconsin. That's where we can effect some change. And God knows where it can go from there. And I thank you for being here this evening, either in person or online. It is so important that you're taking an interest in stopping this insane gun violence. Let's make it better going forward. Thank you so much for your time.
If people online have comments, I think Andy's coming down here so he can relay them to Marcia. And I don't know if either of you two do. Let me ask you one question. If we had a red flag law in Wisconsin at the time. Do you think you might have reported your son? Were you worried enough about him?
Absolutely. I knew something wasn't right, and there I felt helpless. There was nothing I could do. So I would have contacted authorities, and I would have brought it before the judge to make sure that gun was taken away from him.
Marcia, one of our online viewers asks, how much of this work are you doing? I mean, you're here with us tonight. Are you offering this testimony and this witness in other places? And how is it received here in Madison and Wisconsin?
That's a very good question. I wish I was doing more, but last year I was asked to speak as a part of Moms Demand Action on Wear Orange Day. So I gave this testimony, a much briefer form of it there, and it was well received. But there were people there from the Capitol that supported the idea of red flag laws. And then as a result of that, I was asked to speak on the Capitol steps for March for Our Lives campaign. So I've had a couple opportunities to tell my story, and I'm just hopeful that it will make a difference.
And that same person asks if it feels to you like momentum is building, and is momentum for action building with all of the recent events that we've seen? Do you think there's increased demand for things like red flag laws?
I think based on especially the mass shootings that have been rampant the beginning of this year, we're only maybe 3.5 months into the year. And I know two of the most recent ones, there were mental issues going on there, and the families even said that, if there had been a red flag law in their state, they would have utilized it. So as tragic as all this is, sometimes it takes tragedy to lift things up so that we can get things done. And our loved ones have not died in vain.
And we certainly appreciate your courage in sharing your tragedy with us to help move this work forward. You mentioned before we started this evening that you're associated with Moses.
I am. And it has to do with, the equity in the legal justice system. And we also have a public safety task force, which I'm a part of, that is dealing with the violence as far as people in custody or being stopped or killed, especially we cut an issue on the thing that happened with the 5 police officers down in Tennessee. So that was just horrendous. So we are lifting that up and trying to get some traction to bring about some change. Even though it didn't happen in Wisconsin, it still needs to be addressed all over the country.
Thank you. There's a little bit of a pause here. I can see that some folks are typing. Janet, do you have any questions? You need to speak directly into the mic.
I will, thank you. I just wanted to make a couple comments to follow up on Marcia's, one of the solutions she suggested, which is for our legislature and federally to pass red flag laws, otherwise known as extreme risk protection orders. After these mass shootings in the last several weeks or months, I keep hearing people say the legislature should do something. and we know what the legislatures need to do. We have the research that shows what's effective. If you look on the website of Everytown for Gun Safety, they have a comparison of the 10 states with the strictest gun laws compared with the 10 states with the loosest gun laws. And the 10 states with the loosest gun laws have a way higher rate of death by gun than the states with the tight laws. So, and we know what those laws are that succeed. One is the red flag laws. Another is a ban on assault weapons, which President Biden has again called for in the wake of the most recent mass shootings. The ban on assault weapons is awfully important because that's how many people, how you can kill many people in a bank in a matter of a minute or something. So the extreme risk protection ban on assault weapons. And then the other one is comprehensive background checks. Right now, both the federal law and Wisconsin state law have a loophole in them about background checks. And that is that they aren't required from unlicensed sellers, like the people who sell online or at gun shows. And so that means that somebody who's convicted of a felony can buy a gun that way, no questions asked. So what we need to do is close that loophole, both federally and state of Wisconsin. There's an item in the Wisconsin state proposed budget right now that would help facilitate the comprehensive background checks. And I learned just yesterday that 99% of people in Wisconsin live within 10 miles of a licensed gun dealer who is authorized to provide background checks. So this is not a burdensome thing. So if we can just think about those three things, both at the national level and in Wisconsin, we could really make some headway in reducing these gun deaths. Do you have more?
Yes, Marcia, one of our online viewers asked who we should contact to advocate for red flag laws.
I guess our legislators, we need to write letters and maybe have more testimonials on, I think many times legislators they see so many statistics that they don't react to those. But if there's a story, if you could see a face, see the grief that the lack of these laws has caused, perhaps that will prick the hearts of our legislators to make a change. Perhaps because it haven't, and I don't wish this on anyone, it hasn't touched their families or anyone that they love so much. Sometimes they don't get it because they're so far removed, but we have to bring it in and get those stories to the people who need to hear them. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. As I was driving in this evening, I heard a story on NPR. The mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, survived a workplace shooting incident last year in his campaign headquarters. And in the shooting this week, he lost a close personal friend. And he, a Republican, is now advocating for gun reform in the city of Louisville, which everybody was saying on NPR was breaking the mold, but it's that personal connection.
And it's a shame it has to come to that. But I read that story and I was like, wow. I was sad about what happened, but it moved him to make a change. And we have to encourage people and just make it so plain that they can't say no.
I used to work as a counselor, and then I'm retired now, but one of the men that I'm thinking about, and I went to a lot of workshops, he survived a shootout with police, and he said he was deliberately shooting around them. He wanted to die. And I remember learning about that kind of thing can be a form of suicide, and I wonder you've seen that and know about it too.
Suicide by cop does happen more times than we care to acknowledge. And I lost a nephew, a great nephew in Michigan. He had a psychotic break, and he went out onto a busy highway waving a gun, I believe in hopes that the police would come and shoot him. Well, what happened is he went up to a motorist, and the motorist shot him. So he was 26 years old with 4 children. And he definitely had huge mental issues. So it just brings to light how key it is not only for these gun laws to be stringent, but for us to offer the help that people are suffering from mental illness need. Of course, they have to want to get better as well.
I have one more question, if I may, and then I'll go back. I have one more question, and I will ask that, go back and sit down and listen. I appreciate your vast knowledge. I've gotten very involved with an organization called Sandy Hook, where that school where 20-some people died. And I think we have to do something to get rid of guns. I grew up on a farm. Everybody had a gun. I was not interested in hunting as a kid, but all my friends did. But I was out looking for a warm sweater at a big store in this area. And I went to the back of the store because it was Christmas time to pay. And a wall that was about 4 times as long as that tall wall there had nothing but guns on it. And I thought, we got to make them less available, including most people. I'll bet you've read too, and you know from your personal experience, most people have very mixed feelings about dying and killing others. And you try to catch them. If they can't get at that gun, they might change their mind. Thank you.
Thank you for that question and comment, because the access is what the problem is. They're too readily accessible. And I can think of a few large stores that do just carry weapons that people can go in and buy. And it has a lot to do with money as well. And NRA and things like that. But if we can affect some change where it's harder to get your hands on one because you have to go through a background check, or we have these red flag laws that will put some space between what they're thinking and that handgun.
Marcia, I was stunned at the beginning of your presentation. I think you said that 70% of suicides in Wisconsin are by gun. And what you just said about creating some space between that impulse and access to a gun, which is unfortunately a very effective way of ending your own life.
It's 85% fatality rate, opposed to people who take a poison or a drug. 71% of people try those, but only 12% die. But the gun is 85% die.
Just to amplify that, I was talking with a family medicine doctor here in Madison yesterday, and he sees the results of gun violence and tries to bring it up with people in his practice. And he said that most of the suicides by gun in Wisconsin are adolescents and old white men in rural areas who are depressed and don't feel like they can talk to anybody about it. And of course, as a family medicine practitioner, what he wants to do is talk to the parents of adolescents and emphasize to them safe storage of any firearms that are in the house, because if they're not safely stored, adolescents and younger kids too find them. You know, if it's just hidden in the back of your sock drawer, that's not good enough. And that's often how kids get the gun. And for an adolescent, just an impulsive moment, they kill themselves. And if they hadn't had access to the gun, they probably would have gotten through that moment.
Most definitely. I recall when my daughter was maybe 7 or 8, and my husband had like a rifle under our bed. I didn't even know it was there. And my mother-in-law went upstairs, and my daughter was going after this gun. And she got a hold of her. And I just shudder to think if she had not been there, if she had not caught her in time. And after that, I said, no guns in this house. None, because we can act. We had a .38 Smith & Wesson that my husband had purchased for protection. From what? I don't know. But he was not a nice guy all the time. And he would come home late and drink and want to argue. And I had this thought in my mind. Sometimes my temper would flare. So what if I, in a moment of rage, went and got that gun and shot him? My kids would be orphans because I would be in the penitentiary in Tachita, and their dad would be in the ground. And when they went to school, he said, well, where's your mom and dad? Well, my dad's dead because my mom killed him and she's in prison. So what chance do they have? So I was so glad that I got that out of the house, because tempers can flare. And it's not like on TV where people get up after they're shot. That doesn't happen in real life.
Anything else from the online folks?
We don't have anything from anybody online, but I would just like to add that same moment of rage, I think, happens with kids who have guns. And things that might have led to a fist fight when I was a teenager now sometimes end in gunfire.
My daughter and I, we talk about that. My youngest daughter, I have 2 daughters, and each one of them have 3 sons each, and they're all adults now. And she often says, you know, back when I was growing up, we'd fight it out, but now if you get into a fight and you win, they come back with a gun to kill you, or you step on their toe. They're like, instead of just boxing or saying a few words, they go for the gun. So it's just I think it's become glorified. I don't know how that happens, but when I was reading about this young lady who did the mass shooting in Nashville, she had studied other mass shootings. She has stuff written down. So, yeah.
Okay, I think we'll wrap it up now. Marcia, I want to thank you a million times over. This was just a powerful testimonial. I learned so much from it. It was so moving. I hope the people online also got a lot out of it. And I hope that you will continue giving testimonials like this. I know that at least 2, if not 3, pieces of gun legislation will be introduced later this year in the legislature, and we'll have opportunities to show up at the legislature. If you want to get alerted, just get on the Moms Demand Action email list, and you'll find out about it. And I do feel, admittedly, I'm an optimist, but I do feel 2023 is the year we're going to turn this around. I think people have had enough with these mass shootings, and they're finally beginning to get it. And you really helped us get it a lot tonight. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thank you for caring. Thank you for caring, everybody. Thank you.